The quiet of the mansion was almost suffocating in its stillness. The rooms, adorned with regal decor, felt cold despite their grandeur. It was strange how the place Vian once considered lively and full of warmth had turned into an unfamiliar realm, marked by silent tension. Vian sighed, adjusting her gaze to the room she now shared with Jungkook, the man who, by twist of fate and the demands of legacy, was now her husband. Their wedding had been a subdued affair, orchestrated not out of love but necessity. The whispers of the elders, the weight of family legacy, and the injustice. Jungkook was a man she knew only in passing. During her previous marriage, he had been an elusive figure, always abroad. Immersed in the complex world of international business, their interaction had been brief and formal notes exchanged at family gatherings, a handshake during her wedding reception, a reception. He had been a mystery, the younger brother with a sharp mind and eyes that seemed to see far beyond what was right in front of him. Now, as the day turned into night, Vian found herself preparing for another routine that had become part of their new shared existence. The room they inhabited was spacious. His belongings were methodically organized on the left, book lined up neatly placed. Files stacked in meticulous order. Her side was softer, marked by hints of familiarity, a few framed photographs, a delicate vase filled with white lilies. Jungkook intoned his presence as commanding. He avoided eye contact, his expression stoic as he moved with practiced ease to the armchair near the window, removing the cufflinks from his tailored sleeves. Good night, Vian offered softly, a habitual acknowledgement that barely stirred the silence between them. Good night, he replied, his voice deep and strained as though holding back words he would never say. She watched him as he settled into the chair, one leg crossing over the other as he picked up a book. The tension in the room was obvious, a weight that seemed to sink deeper with each passing night. They had mastered the art of performing as husband and wife in front of others, smiles that did not quite reach their eyes, brief touches that felt like obligation, but here in their shared space there was nothing but a void marked by their separate worlds. Vine turned off the lamp on her sides of the bed. Jungkook's faint shuffling as he flipped through the pages of his book was the only indication that she was not alone. One evening, Jungkook sat in his office, a room that mirrored his meticulous nature. Dark wooden panels framed the space, and a wide mahogany desk stood in the center. Papers spread neatly across it. The early evening sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting slanted shadows across the floor. He leaned back in his chair, fingers drumming lightly on the polished surface as he listened to the voice on the other end of the phone. Yes, the mansion should be isolated enough. I don't want any unnecessary attention, he said, his tone calm but authoritative. It's vital that it is ready soon. The voice confirmed the arrangement, detailing logistics and ensuring there would be no interference from the outside world. Jungkook's eyes drifted to the map pinned on the wall marked with location he had considered before settling on this one. A secluded place close yet untouched by the chaos of the city. Understood, keep me updated, Jungkook concluded, hanging up with a click. He sat there motionless for a moment, the weight of his decision pressing on his chest. The mansion represented more than just a retreat, it was a calculated step, an answer to the noise that filled his mind. It was a candid shot of Payan taken on her wedding day to his late brother, smiling eyes alight with hope and innocence that seemed so far removed from the quiet, composed woman she had become. What had he expected from this first marriage? He did not know if the plan. His life had been built on control, on precision, but now faced with the constant presence and the unspoken charm that stretched between them, he found himself questioning more than just his role as the head of the family. He took a deep breath, pushing those thoughts away. For now, he had to focus. The mansion would be But the mere possibility of stepping away from the strained silence they shared was enough to keep him moving forward. The sound of footsteps outside the office door brought him back to the present. He struggled adopting the stoic marks he wore so well. Come in, he called out, eyes already shifting to the papers before him as the door creaked open. That night, the soft hum of the air conditioner filled their shared bedroom as Vayan settled under the covers, the dim light from the bedside lamp casting a golden glow over the space. The silence between them had become familiar, almost comfortable in its discomfort. Jungkook sat on the opposite side of the bed, his back to her as he scanned through documents on his tablet, the rigid line of his shoulders emphasizing the distance he always kept. Tonight, however, there was a subtle shift. Jungkook's fingers chilled against the skin and he took a breath that felt deeper, more deliberate. Vayan, he said, not looking up as he spoke, his tone more commanding than questioning. Vayan turned her head slightly, surprised by the sound of her name from his lips. Yes, he set the table down, eyes still fixed forward, but there was something thoughtful in his gaze, as if he was measuring each word before it left him. There is a new property I acquired, he started, a mansion on the outskirts of the city. She blinked, unsure where this conversation was heading. Oh, she replied softly, more as an acknowledgement than anything else. Jungkook finally shifted to look at her, his dark eyes searching her face with a stoic intensity. I want you to handle the interior. Do whatever you want with it, your style, your choice. There was a pause, a moment where the room seemed to breathe between them. It is important. Vine's heart gave an involuntary lurch at his words, a mix of confusion and something warmer. Are you sure? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Jungkook's expression remained unreadable, though a flicker of something passed through his eyes. Something even he was not ready to name. I thought it might interest you. I heard you did your master in interior design. Surprise flashed across Vine's face, her slight parting of the lips as she registered his words. He barely acknowledged her in the past, and yet here he was recalling details she thought he would never notice. How did you? I listen more than you think. He interrupted, his gaze steady but not unkind. Silence enveloped the room again, but it was not the same. It was loaded now, filled with questions that neither seemed ready to voice. Vayan watched him for a moment longer before lying back, her mind whirling with possibilities and a cautious hope as Jungkook lay down. Turning away, his eyes lingered on the ceiling, thought tangled between the present and the uncertain path they were treading. The sun rose over the city, painting streaks of gold and pink across the sky, and another week unfurled itself quietly. Jungkook would often leave early for the office, a slight nod as a silent goodbye, while Vayan busied herself with scores of found solace in her own past memories. It was as if they were walking a delicate line between. Vayan stood by the sink, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to hold back the tears that had become all too familiar. Almost 2 months had passed since Jino's death, and the ache in her chest had dulled but never disappeared. But from the doorway, Jungkook watched her, his jaw clenched tight, the muscle ticking under his skin. His knuckles were white as he gripped the edge of the door frame. He hated seeing her like this, crumbling silently, never letting anyone in, never letting him in. But he would not push her. This marriage was already taking a steady breath. Jungkook stepped forward, his presence a silent force behind her. Coffee, he said. The wall clicked, but not unkind. Vine turned slightly, startled by his presence, nearness. She had not heard him approach, and the brief surprise made her eyes glisten a little more. Oh, yes, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She reached for the mug on the counter, but he was already moving, his hand brushing her The mansion Jungkook began his voice deep is ready and betraying nothing. It's ready for you to see. You can start planning the interior whenever you are ready. Her breath caught the unexpected news, momentarily driving away her sorrow. It is ready, she repeated, searching his face for any hint of emotion. But his expression remained neutral, almost cold, except for the faintest flicker in his eyes, something unreadable, something guarded. Yes, he set the coffee down on the counter, his gaze unwavering. It is yours to decide whatever you want. Fine nodded slowly, a whirlwind of thoughts taking over. And while Jungkook turned away to take a sip of his coffee, she could not help but wonder what it meant that he, the husband she barely knew, was giving her this chance. Jungkook just didn't waver. I'll pick you up this evening, he added the words clip as though they cost him more than he wanted to admit. Without waiting for a reply, he stepped back, grabbing his cup before leaving the room. The soft sound of his footsteps echoed down the hall, leaving way into the stillness. Jungkook meanwhile walked to his office, each step measured as he pushed down the unease twisting in his chest. The mansion was more than just a property, it was a move, a shift toward something he could not yet name. It was a place he had chosen not out of obligation but with the thought of her having something that was solely hers, free from the past that had wrapped around them both since the day they sitting at his desk. He placed the cup down, staring at the papers stew before him without truly seeing them. His mind wandered to Ryan's eyes, the way they had widened in surprise when he had mentioned the visit. The day slipped into a quiet anticipation as Jungkook pushed himself through meetings and phone calls, his usual stoic demeanor concealing the flicker of thought that strayed back to Ryan and the mansion that awaited them both. The evening fell gently over the city, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple as Jungkook paced in the grand hallway of the mansion. It was a space he knew well, every polished corner, every pane of glass reflecting the fading light, yet tonight it felt different. He had arranged for his driver to pick her up, ensuring everything ran smoothly. This place was meant to be more than just a house. It was a project, a distraction he hoped would help Ryan find a semblance of peace after the loss of Jinho, her late husband, his older brother. There was still distance between them, a chasm neither dared to cross. The sound of car doors closing ran softly as Ryan stepped out, her eyes widening as she took in the mansion's grandeur. For a moment she seemed transfixed, taking in the sprawling facade that rose. Jungkook approached her quietly, his footsteps marked by the gravel path. He could see the way her gaze shifted, lingering on the ornate detail of the entrance. The creeping vines that wrapped around the stone like whispers of an old story. Vine turned, started to find him to so close. Her eyes searched his face, guarded and hesitant. It is beautiful, but Jungkook's expression remained unreadable, though a flicker of something passed through his eyes, something even he was not ready to know him, because it is for a special one. Come inside, Jungkook said. I want you to take a look and tell me what you think. This place, it is yours to say. Her steps echoed through the vast foyer as she moved past him, the marble floors cooled beneath her heels. Jungkook stayed a few paces behind, watching her as she moved through the rooms with an expression he could not quite read. The way she stood the edge of a banister or paused at a sunlight window told him more than any words ever could. Something in Jungkook's chest aged as her words. He had not known how much he needed to hear them until now. Good, he said, his voice softer almost imperceptible, so I'll be here to help. He wondered if she was through him, if she saw through him, if she could sense the intention he kept buried, the way he wanted to fill the space Gino left behind. Why? She whispered barely loud enough for him to hear. Because Jungkook replied, holding her gaze as the last light of the evening settled around them. I want to. He turned and walked toward the main entrance, the tension in his posture betraying the calm exterior. As week passed, the mansion began to change under Vayan's careful touch. She worked tirelessly, selecting fabrics and paint colors, arranging furniture, and ensuring each room felt welcoming. The place, once empty and cold, started to feel more alive, more like a home. At first, he would offer to help move a piece of furniture or listen intently as she explained the flow of her room. The distance between them, which once felt insurmountable, began to narrow. One late afternoon, Vaya stood in the living room, her hands on her hips as she looked at the half finished arrangement. The light from the high window bathed the space in a warm glow, casting long shadows across the polished wood floor. She did not hear Jungkook enter. It is looking more like a home every day, he said, his voice carrying a rare note of softness. She turned surprised at how close he had come. Their eyes met, and for a moment the past they shared, her marriage to his older brother Gino, hung unspoken between them. It is. There was an awkwardness, still a hesitation that neither could quite shake, but in the quiet moments like this there was something else too. A sense of comfort and familiarity that felt dangerously close to intimacy. Jungkook stepped forward, hands in his pocket as he glanced around the room. You have done well, he said, nodding towards the furniture she had chosen and the soft drape that framed the windows. It doesn't feel cold anymore, thank you. She looked away, focusing on a small detail in the corner, trying to steady herself. The proximity made her heartbeat quicken. You have done well, he said, nodding toward the furniture she had chosen and the soft drapes that framed the windows. It does not feel. They stood in silence for a moment, the only sound the faint ticking of a clock in the hallway. Without thinking, Jungkook reached out and adjusted a decorative pillow on the couch. His hand brushed against hers and they both froze, the touch sparking a sudden awareness between them. Vian pulled back. Don't be, Jungkook said, his voice lower, now carrying an edge of something unspoken. He looked at her, his dark eyes searching for something she could not name. The air between them felt heavy, the distance they had carefully maintained beginning to erode with each passing day. I was thinking, he continued after a moment, maybe we could add more personal touches, things that make it feel like someone actually lives here. His tone was casual, but the implication was not lost on either of them. Vian nodded and the tension in her shoulders easing a bit. That is a good idea. Their eyes met again, and this time the silence was different. It was not awkward, but it was charged, as if both were acutely aware of the lines they were balancing on. To anyone else, they might have looked like any other couple planning their home, but for Yoon and Jungkook, the weight of their shared. I will help, Jungkook said, finally breaking the spell as he stepped back. We can go through some things and pick out what fits. Okay, Vayan replied, a small smile breaking through the guarded expression she wore. For the first time, it felt like they were moving towards something more. The mansion was no longer just a distraction, it was becoming a place where they could rebuild piece by fragile piece. As planned, Jungkook's eyes traced the elegant pieces hanging on the walls, his fingers brushing the edges of a sculpture. The gallery was serene, the quiet hum of conversation mingling with the soft clink of glasses and the rustling of delicate frames as Vian moved Her phone buzzed in her pocket and she excused herself politely, slipping out of the room. Jungkook did not give it much thought at first, flipping through a catalogue of other artwork, but as the call stretched on and Ryan was still out of sight, a nagging curiosity started to stir inside him. It was then that he heard her footsteps returning, but there was something different about her. As she turned the corner, she did not notice Jungkook standing right behind her, and her face flickered with a brief but obvious unease when she caught sight of him. Everything okay? Jungkook asked, his voice casual, though there was a weight to his words. Ryan's heart skipped a beat, but she smiled, trying to play it off. Yeah, just some things to sort out, she said quickly, tucking her phone away, but Jungkook was not convinced. The moment felt off. He looked at her, his brow furrowed. It was a private investigator, she confessed. I just needed to make sure that Gino's accident was not as careless as it seemed. I had to confirm the details. Jungkook froze, the air thickening with the silence that followed her words. The tension that had already been building exploded inside him. You are still worried about the accident? His voice was low, a dangerous edge creeping into his tone. What the hell does a private investigator have to do with it? Ryan blinked, trying to process his words. Jungkook is not what you think. He cut her off, his anger rising. You are still obsessing over Jinho's accident, whether it was careless or not. He clenched his fist at his side, glaring at her. What kind of wife are you? Talking about your first husband, that too behind me. You actually needed space. I need to know, she insisted, her voice shaking with frustration. I loved him once. I need to know what happened, whether it was really his fault or if someone else was involved. I could not. You could not trust me. Jungkook's voice cracked like a whip. His anger was not entirely rational, but it burned like fire, and he wasn't sure which part of it bothered him more, the fact that she still cared enough to investigate her past, or that she had not trusted him enough to talk to him about it first. Why does it have to be him again and again? Why not us? He was angry, and she could feel that anger rolling off him in ways. The air between them had shifted into something thick and oppressive. Jungkook turned away abruptly, his jaw clenched tightly. I'll take care of the bill, he muttered, paying for the art without another glance at her. Jungkook walked briskly towards the door, leaving Vine behind her, stomach twisting with uncertainty. Vine's pulse raced as she hurried out of the gallery. After him calling his name, Jungkook waited. He did not stop. She quickened her pace, catching up just as he reached the car. Jungkook, please. He stopped, eyes narrowed, and crossed his arm over his chest. You wanted to know the truth about your first husband? Well, I am telling you the truth right now. I am jealous and you don't seem to care. I do care, she insisted, her voice cracking, but I need answer. I need to know everything so I can move on. Jungkook stared at her, the hurt in his eyes more visible than the jealousy now. Do you know how that makes me feel, like I am not enough for you? Vine felt her heart break in her chest. She took a step forward, reaching for him. Jungkook, please, it is not like that. Before she could finish, Jungkook turned sharply and climbed into the car. She stood there for a moment, heart pounding, before rushing to the passenger seat. The drive back to the mansion was filled with heavy silence, neither of them speaking, only the low hum of the car's engine filling the air. Once they arrived at the mansion, Jungkook stormed inside without a word, his back rigid. Wayne followed him into the mansion, but her mind was racing. Heart still unsettled, she was not sure how to fix this, but she knew she had to try. As she stepped through the door, she miscalculated the step. Once they arrived at the mansion, Jungkook stormed inside without a word, his back rigid. Wayne followed him into the mansion, but her mind was racing. Wayne, his voice was sharp, filled with panic as he whipped around. He rushed toward her in an instant, his hands outstretched to catch her. His grip was firm as he caught her just before she could hit the floor. The proximity between them was electric, his hands gripping her waist as he pulled her. Are you okay? Jungkook's voice was softer now, tinged with concern, but there was something else there too, something more to just protectiveness. His gaze lingered on her, his face inches from hers, Swan's pulse raised as she met his eyes, the anger from earlier dissolving into something raw and vulnerable between them. For a moment, the world around them seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them standing there, caught in the tension of everything they had yet to say. I am sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible, her hand brushing against his chest. I never wanted to hurt you. Jungkook's speech hitched. He did not expect it. But the way she looked at him now, so open, so vulnerable, made him want to fight for them too. His grip tightened around her, pulling her even closer. You don't have to apologize, he said, his voice hoarse. Just don't shut me out again. The silence that followed was heavy, the kind that only his thumb brushed against her temple, the gesture so tender it almost hurt. For a moment, Jungkook's gaze faltered, and he let out a shuddering breath, a confession teetering on the edge. Jin was my brother, he continued, his voice breaking as he spoke the name that had haunted them both. I loved him, Ryan, but sometimes it feels like you are still with him, like you cannot move past what happened and it leaves me behind. His eyes searched hers dark with pain. I want you, I need you to see me, to see us not just as a reminder of what was lost, but as something new as your husband. The admission made her heart stutter. Eyes wide as his words sunk in, he stepped back, only a brief distance between them, and glanced around the room. This place, Jungkook said, gesturing faintly at the bare, undone walls and the expense of the unfamiliar mansion, was supposed to be ours, a chance to start over, away from past and its memories, to create new one. I wanted it for us, Vian, for us, not for you. They stood so close that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, the tremor in his chest as he spoke. He swallowed hard, and she watched the muscles in his throat tense before he leaned in, eyes full of hope and fear. But just as his lips neared, she tensed. I need to think, she stammered, eyes flicking between his in a desperate attempt to explain what she did not understand herself. I cannot right now. Jungkook's jaw tightened, the vulnerable look in his eyes shifting to one of hurt. He nodded, a barely perceptible movement as she turned. He stayed where he was, staring at the empty space where she had stood, the silence swallowing him whole. The soft afternoon light filtered through the tall windows as Ryan stood in the middle of the living room. The silence between her and Jungkook had grown over the last 2 months, stretching like an unbridgeable chasm. Neither had found the right words since that night. The distance was obvious. It is time, Ryan, he said quietly, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, almost detached, as if he had rehearsed this conversation in his mind countless times. We should move. There is no reason to stay here anymore. Ryan's eyes met his, searching for something beyond the guarded exterior. I understood, she said softly, the words settling between them like an unspoken truce. The, the move was swift, a whirlwind of boxes and quiet moment when they arrived at the new mansion. Wine's breath caught in her throat. It was different yet so achingly familiar. The soft evening light poured through the windows as Wine stood at the entrance of the new mansion, the one Jungkook had asked her to. He had intended this place to be a fresh start for them, somewhere they could build a life together away from the ghost of the past. But after that night of his sudden confrontation, Ryan had stopped coming here, and they had barely spoken since Jungkook's voice cut through the silence as he turned. I want us to start over here. Vine's heart thudded in her chest, both surprised and uncertain. She nodded slowly, her eyes not leaving his. It was his right to choose where they live, and she too wanted to move on from the past that had loomed over them, but what she had not expected. The grand foyer was exactly how she had envisioned it when she first began designing the interior. Frames hung meticulously, showcasing the art she had chosen. The soft, inviting colors of the curtain, the rich patterns of the rugs, even the smallest details. You kept it all, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jungkook gazed softened, the corners of his mouth lifting into a faint, bittersweet smile. I only finished what you started. I didn't tell you then, but I planned for us to live here once it was ready. I wanted this place to be ours. The realization sank in, leaving her breathless. He had been thinking of her, of them, even when the distance between them seemed insurmountable. The ache in her chest tightened, a mix of guilt and gratitude. I did not expect this, she admitted, touching the edge of a frame that held a painting. Jungkook stepped closer, the guarded wall in his eyes slipping. I could not let what happened stop us, Vayan. I needed you to know that I am here, that I have always been here, ready to start again. This house isn't just a place, it is meant to be our beginning, away from everything that haunted us. Vayan met his gaze, searching for the sincerity that shone so clearly in his eyes. The distance they had kept from each other felt smaller now, like it could be bridged. Thank you, Jungkook. She said, her voice steady but full of emotion for believing in us. The silence between them crackled with tension, unspoken words, and a long longing they had both buried for too long. Before Ryan could react, his hands were on her waist, drawing her closer. His dark eyes searched hers for any sign of reluctance, but instead he found something else. Ryan, he whispered, his voice raw and vulnerable. I don't want us to keep pretending, holding back what we really feel. She did not move, didn't push him away. Her heartbeat quickened as his face neared, and she felt the warmth of his breath against her skin. There was no room for doubt now, no room for confusion. And when his lips met hers, it was gentle at first, as if testing the waters, but when she responded, leaning into him, the kiss deepened, breaking through the barriers that had kept them apart. The world outside faded, leaving only the two of them. Jungkook pulled away just enough to break the kiss, but still close enough that their breath mingled in the small space between them. Vine's eyes fluttered open, and she searched his gaze, finding the same raw intensity. She felt coursing through her own veins, but he saw it, the glimmer of Jungkook. She gasped, but before she could say more, he was already carrying her up the winding staircase. The hallway seemed endless, each step ringing the silent promise he was making. When they reached the bedroom, he pushed the door open with his shoulder, revealing four rooms that was both. It was not like their previous one, distant, divided, a space that rang with unspoken separation. This was different. Vine's eyes darted around, taking in the soft hues of the walls, the delicate patterns of the curtains, the framed art that she had once admired. Before she could fully absorb it, Jungkook settled down gently, his hands finding their place at her waist once more. His dark eyes locked onto hers, and without hesitation, he tilted her chin up, leaning in. This time, when he met hers, it was fervent and consuming, leaving no space for second guessing. When he finally pulled back, his chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, and his eyes were stormy with emotion. Why, he began, his voice low and raw. I didn't marry you because you were Geno's widow. I need you to know that. I married you because I loved you from the first day I saw you. But you were already his, and I had to accept that. I never thought fate would turn things in my favor. When it did, I could not let it slip away. His words churned in her stomach, each one a stone that sank deeper and deeper. The realization of how long he had carried this love for her. I am done holding back, he whispered, his finger tracing the side of her face, the heat of his touch grounding her. Tonight I am going to show you just how much I love you, how much I have always loved you. The intensity of his gaze, the weight of his words left her breathless. The station desk had clenched to her felt away, replaced by an overwhelming need to meet him, to accept what she had been too afraid to face. If she didn't let him in now, she knew she would never be able to. And as he leaned in again, his lips finding hers with renewed passion, the world outside ceased to exist. The past, the pain, the doubts, they melted away in the heat of their shared desire. He, his touch, tender yet possessive, promised her everything, and for the first time she let herself believe it. The dinner downstairs was forgotten, left to cool in the silence as they created a new story within this was one that was only theirs. His touch was both bold and possessive, waiting for her to see him, to trust him. His hands moved, tracing the contours of her face. His finger brushed away the loose strand of hair that framed her eyes, and he gazed at her with a vulnerability that spoke louder than words. The soft glow of the room wrapped around them like a protective cocoon. Wyan, he whispered, the weight of his confession still clinging to the air between them. I need you to know that this is where we start. Let's forget every barrier. She reached up, letting her fingers intertwine in the dark strand of his hair, drawing him closer, letting him know that she was ready. Jungkook's breath was warm. Its touch was deliberate, as if he were mapping the part from the past to the present, grounding her in the reality of their shared space. They moved together, slowly exploring the trust that had taken root between them. The room seemed to breathe with them, the soft sound of their connection. It wasn't rushed, it was a slow unraveling, a careful dismantling of every hesitation that had kept them apart. Jungkook's hand moved to cradle her back, pulling her closer as he whispered words against her skin. Words of love, of unspoken dream that had waited too long. Here there was no guilt, no memories of the past, only the present and the man who loved her with an intensity that made her whole. The night deepened, but the warmth between them remained constant, filling the room with an unspoken promise. And when their movement slowed, when the world settled around them, Vine felt a peace she had known. This was more than just a moment, it was a new beginning, a life where she could finally be loved fully without reservation. As they lay together, breathless and content, Jungkook's arm tightened around her, drawing her close. He pressed her. This is how I wanted us as one. Vine smiled, her eyes closing as she let the safety of his embrace wash over her. And as the first light of dawn filtered through the curtains, they stood wrapped in each other's arms, a new story unfolding, a story that was only theirs, filled with new hope, trust, and love that could withstand anything.